Yeah, so firstly I just want to thank everybody for coming along. It's the 4th consecutive year that we've done a wreath laying ceremony for Julia Morrissey. Before that, there was work done by the relatives and friends of Galway 1916 group to erect her headstone. That was in 2017, but before that she was essentially unknown. Her story was not told at all, so it's great to see familiar faces and faces that we don't know join us today. We're going to open the proceeding with a reading of the poem by Éirígí about Julia's life.
So we wrote this poem to remember Julia and also to celebrate her contribution, and it's called Remembering Julia. A proud daughter of Ireland, she fought in 16. Alongside her gallant comrades, she risked all that we might be free. Her reward, comrades executed, a mental breakdown, her grief, suffering and trauma, the talk of the town. No hero story for her, though she was brave, no medal nor footnote, just an unmarked grave. Today at last her name is known, and we say it with pride. Remember Julia Morrissey, for she helped to turn the tide. Remembering Julia.
Thank you, Ria. I'd like to invite Scott Rochelle to read the 1916 Proclamation now.
On you. The Provisional Government of Ireland, of the Irish Republic, to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment and, supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government that has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the past 300 years, they have asserted it in arms. Standing on that fundamental right, and again asserting it in arms in the face of the world, we hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state. And we pledge our lives and lives of our comrade in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to, and hereby claims, the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Irish Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally and oblivious to the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past. Until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, representative of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of our men and women, the provisional government hereby constituted will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust to the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessings we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Thomas J. Clark, Sean McDiarmid, Thomas McDonough, P.H. Pearce, Eamon Keant, James Connolly and Joseph Plunkett.
Thanks, Scott. So, Accordia, we're here today to pay tribute to one of Ireland's forgotten revolutionary leaders, Julia Morrissey. She was born here in Athenry in 1892 and grew up in an Ireland that was heavily shaped by British colonialism and class division. An Gurta Mór was a living memory for many. The Land War and the Gaelic Revival were in full swing, and the wheels that would eventually lead to the 1916 Rising were slowly being set in motion. When those motions started to turn faster, various Republican groups were being founded across Ireland. Julia played her part in this, being central to the founding of a Commemorating branch here in Athenry. She would then go on to serve as overall commander of Commemorating during the 1916 Rising here in Galway. She stayed active after the Rising, holding various positions in Commemorating through the Tan War and after the treaty, which, like the majority of Commemorating members, she opposed. They knew full well what a successful counter-revolution would look like, especially for women. The forces that were for the treaty included the most conservative, wealthy and powerful elements of Irish society. In the 26 counties, this included the landed gentry, the indigenous Irish capitalist class and the Catholic Church. They were joined by a minority of the Republican movement, along with former members of the RIC and Irish men who had served in the British Army. Together, these forces set about suppressing the Republic. Their ultimate success led to the creation of two pro-capitalist sectarian states that offered no threat to the power, wealth or status of the gentry, the churches or the capitalist class. These two states came into being as a result of a brutal counter-revolution. Pro-treaty forces turned British guns on their former comrades with all the fervour and viciousness they could muster, and they were not found lacking on this front. Executions were a favourite tactic of the Free State. One infamous example of this was the execution of Rory O'Connor, Joe McKelvey, Dick Barrett and Liam Mellows on the 8th of December 1922. Mellows had a very close relationship with Julia Morrissey. We know from local oral history projects that many people believed that they were romantically involved. Some said they were engaged, while others said their relationship was purely platonic. But whatever the truth is, it's very clear that they had a close bond. So his execution had a profound impact on Julia. Neighbours at the time reported that she was using a Ouija board in an attempt to contact Mellows and other deceased comrades. In the years that followed the counter-revolution, Julia's mental health declined. She ended up being committed to what was then called the mental asylum in Ballinasloe. And around this time, she applied for the military veterans pension and 1916 veterans medal. She received neither, most likely because she had no one in Ballinasloe to help her with the paperwork. But even if she had, it's very unlikely that she would have received the pension, because the Free State had inserted a clause that essentially excluded women, a clause that stated in order to receive the pension, you had to have seen active service, which would have excluded most Commemorating members in their eyes. Julia spent 4 decades in Ballinasloe until her death in 1974. With no surviving relatives to pay for an inscription, she was buried here, essentially in an unmarked grave, which remained the case until 2017. Even in death, Julia's contribution was forgotten. This is Julia Morrissey's story. It's a story full of bravery and sacrifice, but also tragedy and suffering. Be it the state of our mental health services, or the writing out of our history of our radical women, or the legacy of the counter-revolution, Julia's story touches on many wider issues in society. Yet this counter-revolution did not extinguish the vision that was held by Julia and her comrades, which continues to inspire many today. The public commemoration of figures from the revolutionary period during the decade of centenaries is testament to this. Commemorations were organised and monuments were erected across Ireland, in addition to those which had been erected in the century prior. But 109 years after the Easter Rising, there is still a huge gap when it comes to commemorating women from this period. That's why 3 years ago we launched the Julia Morrissey Bridge campaign. Galway City's new bridge runs parallel to 2 other bridges which are named after revolutionary figures, Wolfetone Bridge and O'Brien's Bridge. The Wolfetone Bridge is obviously named after Theobald Wolfetone, a leading figure in the United Irish Rebellion of 1798, while O'Brien's Bridge is named after William Smith O'Brien, a key figure in the Young Ireland Rebellion of 1848. So we believe that naming the new bridge after a figure from 1916 would fit in thematically, and that it would go some way towards addressing the chronic lack of public commemoration of Ireland's radical women. That lack of public commemoration was somewhat addressed by Dublin City Council in 2014 when they named the bridge after Rosie Hackett, who, like Julia, was active in the Easter Rising but largely forgotten afterwards. Galway City Council had a golden opportunity to end the decade of centenaries in a similar fashion, and in doing so, right an historic wrong against Julia Morrissey. But instead, they chose to name the bridge after hope, an abstract concept, in spite of the fact that their own criteria stated the bridge would be named after a person or an event, and the public were invited to make submissions on this basis. But when the name was announced, it was clear this criteria was not followed. We sent a Freedom of Information request to the Council in relation to this and discovered from minutes of a Council meeting that the criteria was changed after the public submissions had been made. This is a clear violation of their own rules, one that we believe was politically motivated, born out of a desire to name the bridge out of anyone or anything but Julia. We have contacted Council officials and the Minister for Local Government, pointing out this violation of Council rules. We haven't received a reply as of yet, but we will continue to pursue this until justice is done. Julia was forgotten in her own lifetime by the nation for which she risked life and liberty. She spent the best part of 4 decades in Ballinasloe's mental hospital, and following her death, spent a further 4 decades in an unmarked grave. Now, Galway City Council are continuing to ignore her legacy, to try and bury her memory once again. But we have shown that this cannot happen. Our campaign has brought Julia's name, her story and her contribution into the public sphere. It has shown that there is massive support for the public commemoration of Galway's forgotten 1916 leader. We will not stop working until Julia's contribution to the fight for Irish freedom is finally and fittingly honoured. Today's wreath-laying ceremony is also a very important event when it comes to honouring Julia Morrissey. So you should all be very proud to be here and playing your part in paying tribute to her. Julia deserves to be remembered. Her story deserves to be heard. And her contribution, her bravery and sacrifice deserves to be commemorated. So thanks again to all of you for coming along today as we pay tribute to one of Galway's bravest daughters, Gurmagh. So we're just going to finish up with a minute's silence and a ceremonial dipping of our national flag.